They are now. Welcome back to the workshop. So today is another episode of HRE Uncut. But before we get into that, let's have a talk about Mondello and our racing exploits at the weekend. So we've a little edit coming up for you here, and I just said I'd pop in before we showed you that edit to tell you one or two little things. So, as you know, with COVID and everything that was on it, we weren't able to bring a cameraman down with us. So it was up to just me and the driver to try and get as much as we could while we were out and about. Now, we did have a plan that, unfortunately, like the best laid plans of mice and men, didn't go as we expected. We did get a little bit of footage. Not the best quality, but I think Billy has managed to do a really great job and make a nice little edit for you guys to enjoy. Have a look and see. We did run into problems with the car, so it is reasonably short. Have a look at it, see what you think, and I'll explain to you what happened when we come back. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. We did have good fun and the day was starting out very well. Unfortunately, during qualifying, we had a head gasket issue. The head gasket blew in the most unusual place. I've never seen this happen before myself. It went from number 4 cylinder across where the hole for the extra head stud is and out that way. We had spare gaskets with us. So between qualifying and unfortunately we didn't actually get the head done for the next race because we had a very short period of time between qualifying and the next race. But we did get the head gasket back on again and we did get a grid position and get out for the last race of the day for us. Unfortunately, we made it only a couple of laps and the exact same problem happened again. The gasket blew across from the number 4 piston across through the cylinder head, extra cylinder head stud for the 11 stud conversion, and once that happened the motor went down power and we retired from the race. The engine is out of the GT already because we're going to have a very short turnaround. The next race is going to be on, I think it's the 15th of July, so we have a really short turnaround to solve this problem. When we took the cylinder head off the first time, we did notice a few witness marks on the piston. What we think is happening is that the block got skimmed the last time for the rebuild of that engine. You guys will all remember that rebuild. We skimmed the top of the block and the pistons were just ever so slightly protruding from the top of the block. We measured everything up and we thought it was close, but I did think I had enough clearance. I didn't want to go skimming anything off the top of the pistons because the pistons we are using are particularly short on the top. Between the top of ringland and the top of the piston, there's very little material, and I really didn't want to go skimming the piston. I wanted the extra little bit of compression that was going to be given to me by having that piston come. It was no more than 2/1000 out of the top of the block, but it was probably coming out 2/1000. I would actually wanted that compression. What we think happened is at higher RPM, somewhere around 6.5, 7,000 RPM, we think the piston was coming in contact with the cylinder head. We see sort of witness marks in that area, and it would take very little contact at that speed and those forces to cause the cylinder head to be loosened from its clamping from the head studs enough that could cause the gasket to leak. The other very strong possibility, and it's actually what I think is going on, is that there's distortion across the top of the block. Now I did pick up some distortion across the top of the block the last time. We honed the top of the block with oil stone, but we still seen this leaking. So the plan is to completely strip the engine back down again to a bare block. We're going to bring it and the cylinder head to the machine shop, and we're going to get the machine shop to clip the top of the block and to clip the top of the cylinder head. The hope from that is that we should see any distortions in the top of the block or in the cylinder head. I'm fairly confident that we are going to find distortion there. What we'll then do is to kind of belt and braces this thing is we'll also take 1,000 or 2,000 off the top of the piston to make sure that they're absolutely 100% flush with the top of the block. And I think all of that together should solve the problem. So look, that's motor racing, that is development. If you're going to build an engine that you're trying to squeeze every single last horsepower out of, you are going to run into problems from time to time. I talk about it on my channel because, as you guys all know, I like to be open and I like to be honest with you. We do have problems and we do try and solve those problems. Everybody has to learn. We're learning at a much higher level, but it's still learning, and that is where we come across it. So we'll keep you posted as the next couple of weeks go on. We'll show you when the engine block comes back from machining, and you'll get to see how that goes on. Now, some of you guys might remember that I was going to convert this particular vacuum pump here to work with my Series 3 Land Rover, and in fact I got some very good, interesting feedback from a couple of people on the channel who said they would really like to see this conversion happening. And unfortunately, sorry to say that I've come up with a much better alternative. You figured out where I'm going with this, don't you? All I could see was your face. You can't. People will unsubscribe. Okay. So I came up with a much better idea. This is all very funny because I think Billy just found out about what the much better idea is. So yes, I was going to make all the mountings and all that. Great idea. It was going to work well. But I found a much better vacuum pump. I'm going to show it to you. I found this vacuum pump here, which I think is going to work brilliantly well for solving the problem with no vacuum pump on our series. It just so happens to be attached to a 300 TDI, which we are also going to fit to the Land Rover, which I think is going to solve all our braking issues by giving us a really simple, effective vacuum pump in a nice, neat package. It's attached to a 300 TDI, sure that will be great as well. All joking aside, this 300 TDI came up on a local website that here in Ireland. It was at a very reasonable price, and it happened to be reasonably local to the workshop as well. So I said, well, feck it, we'll go for something a little bit different. The Land Rover Series 3 that I have has a 2.25 normally aspirated tractor engine. Well, no, it's a Land Rover engine, but it feels like driving around a tractor engine. And I, as I said, really do intend on using my series on a daily basis, and its ability to tow is pretty poor, I'll be honest. So I've been thinking of a couple of different conversions. I'd love to put a V8 in it, a petrol V8 in it, one of the Rover V8s. But right now, that isn't really very attainable because the petrol V8 I'd like to build would be a 4 litre, and they are not just off the shelf. So as I said, this 300 TDI came up. I've done my research into it, and this pretty much will go straight in. There's a guy called Steve Parks on the internet and on YouTube who does conversion kits for it. I've had a look, and the conversion kit is pretty tame. It's something that I'll manage to do myself. And he explains very well some of the problems, and there isn't really all that many. A turbo 2.5 litre TDI 300. This is out of a Discovery 1, a first generation Discovery. And I think it'll go really, really well in our Land Rover. So I've also purchased another gearbox from another guy local to me, a Series 3 gearbox, which what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely rebuild the Series 3 gearbox, and it has a transfer as well. So I'm going to completely rebuild the Series 3 gearbox. I'm going to mount it on here to our TD300 in this rig that I've built. I just knocked together this little rolling rig so that I can roll this whole engine around the workshop and do anything I want on it. I'm going to do all the seals, rocker cover gasket, front oil seal, rear main oil seal, reset all the tappets, put a new timing belt on it, and then adapt the clutch for the Series 3 gearbox, get the Series 3 gearbox all fitted up here and working, and do the adaptations that I need to do here to the front. So the adaptations that need to be done on the front of it is the alternator used to swing down this side of the engine over here, and it has to be moved and mounted up here. So we'll have to find an alternator that suits, make some mountings and put it on over there, and that will adapt this engine to fit inside. An engine mounting has to be built for over under that side because the Series has both of its engine mountings slung forward on the chassis, whereas the TD300 or the 300 TDI, which is what this is, has one engine mounting back here and one engine mounting on the front. So an engine mounting will have to be made for over that side. Again, pretty basic fabrication stuff, no problem for me whatsoever. The idea is to get this completely built up, the engine all nicely painted, cleaned up, and any maintenance needing to be done, have it all together in one lump here ready to go, and then we can bring in the Land Rover, take out the engine and box that's in it and drop this in, and in theory that should be pretty much a straightforward swap then, because if we use this engine and the original Series transmission, all the drive shafts, everything else will work out, all the gear lever replacements, all that sort of stuff will work out perfectly where it should be, and it should allow us to basically just drop this straight in. This is not a project that I'm going to be rushing. The Land Rover is running and driving brilliantly. It's just down power. So this is something that I am going to be doing, but I'm going to be tipping away at it. So we might make a video or two. Let us know in the comments if you're interested in seeing it. I promise it won't develop any more than the vacuum pump. No more Project Runaway. But you know, with all the other projects that are on board and going at the moment, I have to give priority obviously to my customers' work, so this is just going to be tipped away at on the evenings and the weekends. Evenings and weekends, that's when I do my customer stuff anyway, so I don't know when this is going to get done, but it's here anyway, and I'll be, you know, I'll play away with it as time goes on. Speaking of customer projects, we are moving on a little bit in the shop. The engine for this red roofed race car belonging to Michael is just about finished and done. I have made some videos on it for you guys, so you can get to see those. So that engine should be going into that in the very near future, which will get that up and running, and hopefully we'll see that out for a couple of races. The Cooper S, the FIA Cooper S, I know everybody has some great interest in this. We were waiting on needles to come for it. The needles have come for it. I just have to make for the Roland Road tuner. He asked me if I could make him a attachment to go on the dash pot here so that he can measure the needles and know where the needles are up or down. And with that then he'll be able to fine tune the needles. Just take a moment, by the way, just to thank all of my subscribers. The video on fitting the engine to this came out at over 23,000 views, and it blew me away. I can't believe how many people watched the videos and how many people subscribed to the channel after watching that video. So thank you so much to everybody who is new to the channel. Have a look around, see any of the videos that we have up there. We have a good bit of content up there now. If you like what you see, give us a subscribe. To all my regular viewers, thank you so much for all your support. I really do appreciate it, and I really do appreciate all the comments, all the likes that you guys give. So don't forget to bang that like button, it does help us, and for all the support. I can't believe how much we have grown. Let's go into the engine shop now and see where we are there. All right, so back in the engine shop here, and a couple of projects on the bench here that I'll just show you to look at what needs to be done. And this is just giving you an idea of some of the stuff. As I said, there's loads more stuff happening in the shop. The other stuff that you would have seen on other Hickey Uncuts is all progressing along nicely. It just may be in various different stages. So a customer dropped me in these pistons the other day, these pistons and conrods, and what he wants me to do is he wants me to remove these pistons from the rods. He wants me to lighten and balance these rods, and he wants me to fit, to supply and fit some Omega cast pistons. A couple of people were asking me recently about Omega cast pistons, and I suppose this is a good opportunity to talk about them. The running clearance is 2 and 4 thousandths running clearance. Omega recommend on their cast pistons somewhere between 2 and 4 thousandths as the running clearance for those pistons. In applications in the past, when I've used Omega pistons for the road, I try and go for the tighter clearance rather than the looser clearance. 4000 is like the absolute max clearance, and you could use that in a very specific race application where you were trying to just get every single last ounce out of a race engine. Running slightly higher clearances can be known to give a little more power because it frees the piston in the bore. But honestly, in all my race engine applications now, I run a forged piston anyway. Forged pistons are much more stable, they don't expand as much, and you can run them at a tighter clearance, which gives you better compression, better oil control, and ultimately more power anyway. On a road car, Omega pistons are really very good. The cast Omega pistons are really very good, and I generally, as I said, try and keep the clearance as close to the minimum spec as possible, as I find if you're very careful with the braking procedure and you run the car up nice and gently and you bring in that running in procedure over sort of 300 to 500 kilometers, you will get a brilliant service life out of those pistons. They will control oil really very well, and they'll be nice and quiet. Running higher clearances, as I said, you reduce oil control, you get that puff of smoke, but you'll also get a noisy engine. You'll hear piston slap or piston vibration in the engine, whereas if you can bring those clearances down slightly, you take out that piston slap and vibration and you make it for a quieter, smoother motor. So that's kind of what I would say about that. These rods, I'm pretty sure they're Innocenti rods. Now, I'm only pretty sure that they're Innocenti rods because one of the commenters in the last video for another engine I built commented on these rods and reckoned that's what they were because they had this raised bar in them. So that's what I think these are. They're the Innocenti rod. Anyway, it kind of doesn't matter that much. We're going to be lightening the end of the rod, the small end here, and we're also going to be lightening the big end here. So we'll turn it back a little bit on the lathe. We're going to remove some of this big heavy counterweight that's on here to lighten it off, and we're going to check the rods for ovulation, and then we're going to fit them to to Omega pistons. We might also make them a fully floating pin, so we'll ream the bore in the small end and make it a fully floating pin, and that will give them a really reliable road going setup that will give them plenty of years of service. Another customer dropped in their main caps for me to clip, but I'm going to need the engine, because obviously when you clip this cap, this is the center main cap, when you clip it you can change the shape of the cap. So it's very important that if you are going to have the cap of your engine clipped, in order for to put a center main strap, that you get the journal diameter checked, the main bearing journal diameter checked for roundness. He'll have to drop his block to me, and then I'll be able to put this cap on after I clip it, check for roundness, and if it's out of round, line hone it, and if it's actually really bad, we'll have to line bore it. But 99.9% of the time, the method I use for skimming these caps, I am able to just line hone out any irregularities by just very simply doing that. Last thing on the bench to show you guys is we've a bunch of bearings after arriving, and those bearings are to rebuild a S box for another customer. The box is going to need some welding. There's a big hole after coming in the corner of the box here. The customer had covered it up with some JB weld. That's going to need to get welded. The synchro hubs are all real good on it. They just need new balk rings, new bearings, and I'm going to change it to a central oil pickup. I'm going to change it to the central oil pickup because this one doesn't have it. And these boxes are notorious for when you're hard cornering, especially in a sort of a racing or a rally application where you're going to get yourself into a situation where you'll get oil starvation or you'll lose oil pressure. So very definitely that is something that we're going to do for that. Other little jobs, come on, a couple of back plates to build up for a customer. So we've one done, we've one more to do. And we have a few little bits and bobs. We've a water pump to change for another customer, and we have some parts after arriving for another engine build that we're going to do as well. So hopefully you guys are enjoying all the videos. Hopefully you enjoyed the little bit that we got from the racing, and come July we'll have a little bit more. Like I said, I'll keep some footage of the race engine when it comes back to show you what we got done. The engine lifting hooks, I know that there has been a couple of people have messaged me and asked, and I have to say, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm not dropping the ball on this one. I'm just incredibly busy. A couple of people noticed in the last video I mentioned that I have a day job as a teacher, and I really do. That is no lie, and it does demand a lot of my time. I want to build these engine hooks for you. A really good guy, actually a subscriber to Classic Mini DIY, Cole's channel, has actually drawn up for me, and my apologies, I had your name wrote down earlier on and I've lost a piece of paper, so I'm going to get on to you in the next couple of days to thank you for that drawing. He did me up a proper structural drawing, a CAD drawing of the hook, which I've used now to be able to order up the right amount of steel and to make a couple of templates so that I can start making these lifting hooks to a specific. I just have a few more jobs that I need to get through in the workshop first, which is why the TDI is going to take its time. I have to get through these jobs first because they're customer jobs, and I just want to make sure they get their cars for the summertime. I don't want to leave anybody hanging. So bear with me. These lifting hooks are going to happen. I'm not dropping the ball on them. I promise you it will happen. It just, as I said, one-man band, a lot of plates spinning around up in the air. So I will get them done. It's just taking a little bit of time. Other than that, thank you all for watching another episode of Hickey Race Uncut, and I'll see you guys on the next one.